Well, we got a hell of a show today. First off, Mark Mitchell, Vice President of Operations at Rasmussen. He has data. You can find out more at Rasmussen Reports, Ramussen. Then Joel Kotkin, he's a scholar of global economic and urban trends, serving as the Roger Hobbs Presidential Fellow in Urban Futures at Chapman University. Author of many books, including The Coming of Neo-Feudalism. You can follow him on Joe Kotkin, Kotkin. Then Elaine Culotti, entrepreneur, designer, sustainable farmer, former star of Undercover Billionaire. She advocates for improved wildfire response. Guess what? She's been through it, and we will get into that with her. You can follow her on Lipstick Farmer on X. And then Emilie Hagen comes back to tell us about her experience with Representative Massey and what it is going on presently in the Capitol. Back with Mark Mitchell right after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Make Paleo Valley's grass-fed and finished bone broth protein powder part of your holiday celebration this season. Instead of grabbing that carton of Christmas eggnog, instead order some chocolate bone broth to mix up a delicious hot chocolate. It really tastes just like hot chocolate. Warm yourself up, warm your family and friends, guests. They will love it. Paleo Valley's chocolate, vanilla, and salted caramel bone broth are not only crave-worthy, they're high in protein, low in calories, nutritious. This is no ordinary bone broth powder either. It's made from actual bones, not hides. And it's a fabulous source of collagen, the most abundant and one of the most depleted proteins in our body. And Paleo Valley is free of pesticides, GMOs, steroids, antibiotics, hormones, and soy. And a cup of hot chocolate made with Paleo Valley's bone broth protein powder is a great way to keep your cravings in check. That's how I use it, particularly when those sugary snacks come out. Be sure to have enough in the pantry. And of course, Paleo Valley's entire product line lends itself to gifting. Remember that this season.
Go to drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order, 20% off when you subscribe. That is drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. All right, Mark Mitchell is the Vice President of Operations at Rasmussen. You can follow him on X at, well, you can follow Rasmussen at least, Rasmussen with an EN_poll. Mark, welcome back. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, really great to be back. A lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And I saw you on, what's his name, show. He was going off on how excited he was to talk to you. Shoot, I'm blanking on his name. In any event, some of you, what you were reporting on was on Trump's polling. So give us that. What's his approval rating doing?
Well, we're an independent pollster, and we're the only one that does a daily presidential approval and right direction, wrong track. And so we see the numbers respond to how things are going on in the news. And what's kind of weird is that Donald Trump's approval rating is not that bad. He's only underwater 5 points right now. If you take approval and minus disapproval, it's net -5. And that actually puts him higher in our polling than any of the prior presidents going back to Obama's first term. But what was kind of weird is that just a few weeks ago, his polling cratered down to -10 almost, and it was right on election day. And then you had this situation where Republicans underperformed what people expected in New Jersey and Virginia. And the message there, I think, is a very stark message for Donald Trump, which is just because you're doing okay and just because you're having a lot of wins, the messaging matters and how you work with the Republican Party matters. And what happened is that Donald Trump picked up a lot of Democrat crossovers and independent voters just a year ago. That's how he won. And those people did not turn out for Republicans. And so one of the things that often happens on the right is when they overperform in the polling, there's not a lot of introspection about why. And right now they're governing with a traditional Republican conservative model that doesn't really fit younger voters and doesn't inspire people to go out in the polls. And that's a tough message because Donald Trump right now, it looks like he's shaping up to lose the House in the midterms. The generic ballot polling is not very good, and it's going to get worse, in my opinion. I've seen some others put out some pretty bad polls. Marist's probably not right, but has Democrats up 14 points. Rich Barris, People's Pundit, put out Democrats up 8. So that means probably that when the Democrats get in, you're staring down the barrel of an Epstein commission, maybe some more impeachments, maybe people investigating things like Twitter and cracking down on free speech. And the legislative agenda of the Trump administration is going to be shot. Like, that's it. No more.
So two things. How in this world and in this administration in particular can you predict it's going to get worse? I mean, how can you predict anything, frankly, in this world right now, number one? No. And number two, if it does get worse, what do you recommend for them?
Well, really, they need to understand why they were truly elected and put together, in my opinion, a plan that Republicans can actually address legislatively. Again, Trump has done a lot of positive things that speak to his agenda and the things that his base wanted, like deporting a whole lot of people, finishing the wall. He's doing the best he can to try and end the wars and make deals with people overseas, do the tariffs. Like, people were okay with that. But he's talking now about prices, and people were concerned about prices. But the situation that we really have is that people have been squeezed out of the housing market. They can't afford to start families. People under 50 really have it hard. We have polling that shows that it's only in the 20s, the percent of people who think today's children will be better off than their parents. People think that the housing crisis under 40 has reached crisis levels. And you see these reports coming out, like right around Election Day, too. The National Association of Realtors, first-time homebuyer age, 41 years, over 40 for the very first time. So our economy is asking young people to get out of college and work for 18 years before they can even get into a house. How are we going to get to replacement levels of procreation here? Like, this is catastrophic for the future of the country and the dollar, and nobody's really addressing it. And then you have Trump talking about turkey prices. That's not adequate. They don't want a 30-cent cut in gas prices. It's not really going to address the fundamental aspects of, we kind of have a ruling party, uniparty kleptocracy / oligarchy that has squeezed a lot out of the American middle class. And so my advice to them was, listen, if you don't fix this as a Republican, the Democrats are drifting towards democratic socialism. Even the under 40 voters that voted for Trump, there's a lot of polling that shows they have a lot of socialistic tendencies. And if the right doesn't have an answer for it, the left does. They will get Democrat socialists into office, and they're going to pass things like massive $10 trillion bipartisan housing crisis bills that will probably appease a lot of younger voters, but they'll probably also, raid the Treasury and collapse the dollar and create even more inflation. So what is the right's acknowledgement of the actual problems that we have, the deeper fundamental flaws of our modern capitalism, which looks a lot like corporatism and corporate welfare? And how are they going to address it in a pragmatic way? They don't seem to have a solution. And the messaging coming out of the optics, coming out of the Trump administration is, well, he's surrounded by a lot of billionaires. And so they have to fix that. And they got a year.
What about this under 40 voter? You told me before the mics heated up that they are brutal. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so they are not idealistic at all. You speak values and conservatism or socialism. They say free market capitalism, they like it. But then we asked a whole lot of questions about socialistic policies, and even the ones who say they voted Trump agree with that. Things like 3/4 of the Trump voters under 40 want to nationalize major industries like healthcare, energy, and tech. 56% of the Trump voters under 40 agree that they should have excess wealth confiscation in order to have first-time homebuyer, programs, like things like that. The ones that voted for Trump are pretty much split on whether they would support a Democrat socialist. And so you have to understand what these people want, which is not ideology. They just want clown world fixed. And what was fascinating, and nobody noticed, and I was screaming about it at the time, was that at the end of February, Donald Trump's approval rating with voters under 40 was at 60%. These are people that went to Hillary Clinton by over 20 points. And that's like alarm bells, crazy, like why, like Republicans should have dropped everything and understand exactly what was happening then. And what was happening is that Doge was at its peak. You can look at Google search trend volume, and it's to the week. People were searching the word Doge most. That's when Donald Trump's approval rating under 40 was highest. And it was also a week after he said that Napoleon quote about he who saves his country violates no laws. So that's the kind of energy these people want. And time again, I've looked at questions like, hey, here's Arctic frost. How big of a problem is that? Well, 80% of people under 30 say it's very serious, and they're the highest people of all the age cohorts that say it's serious, and they're the most wanting of those people to go to jail. It was like 59 to 19 among the 18 to 29s. And they also want the judges impeached. They just want this stuff fixed. And so you had Donald Trump getting a 60% approval rating with young voters. It crashed down to 35% on election day. And who do they like now? They have a 62% favorability rating of Mamdani. So you can say, well, he's socialist and it's bad and it's going to ruin the country. They don't really believe that. They don't really care. They don't want to hear these boomer values. And I think there's an aspect of the fourth turning here, of a changing of the guard from like a value set and institution set that's been very, very prevalent for the last couple of decades. 60% of our elected national leaders are boomers. Well, in the next 10 years, it's going to be millennials. So there's going to be a really like disruptive changing of the guard.
Why doesn't he do some more Doge-like action, in terms of, I don't know, bringing somebody smart in to solve, work on the housing thing, get a giant building thing going or something where it's, looks like he's moving towards helping with that problem?
So I'm a DC outsider, and I try to meet people and talk and ask what's really going on. And I think Doge came in and it kind of filled a little bit of a vacuum. Elon Musk was very, very committed to this program, and people were buying what he was selling, especially the younger voters. And yet, right around the time when the debt ceiling the can got kicked, and then they started writing the One Big Beautiful Bill, he definitely took a back seat. And I think there's an aspect of they wanted a legislative win. They didn't want him interfering with the One Big Beautiful Bill. But unfortunately, in my opinion, what it looks like is that they had their own George Soros for about 6 months, and they got rid of him because it was, troublesome for the DC status quo. People don't like the DC status quo. It polls horribly. They hate Congress. They hate business as usual. But Republicans were pretty quick to embrace business as usual. And so they could try it again, but they kind of gave up on it. And right now, what it seems like is, again, Donald Trump's doing a lot of good things, but he's counter-signaling himself. He's kind of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. So he'll talk about like economic populist things one day, and then the next day he's going to praise H-1Bs and be, talking to global billionaires about all these big investment deals. Right. For things like AI, well, the youth are concerned that AI is going to take their job. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there. Yeah. So again, they need more intention. They need more strategy. They need to build. Like he said, fight, fight, fight. And I think a lot of people looked at that when he was shot and projected a lot of what they wanted fought for onto him. But I don't think anybody really sat down and say, well, here's the fight, fight, fight plan for America and how we're going to address the fundamental flaws, which are the economy's been hollowed out. You got a generation that's done very well, and every other generation is suffering. Our jobs were sent overseas. You have the H-1Bs flooding high-paying jobs. You have the border, obviously. And then also, we were promised Drain the Swamp 10 years ago. It was super popular. Everybody loves it. Like, what's been done? Like, nothing's been done. There's been no visible process of institutional reform. And this, in my opinion, explains why the Epstein thing is such a big deal. And I said it was a big deal 3 months ago. Nobody listened to me. When you have people questioning the FBI, well, it's because the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. It was like 53% of America said they were Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. And then he just put somebody else in charge of the Gestapo. We still have a CIA where 41% of the people think it killed the sitting president. And so if you can say transparency and you can unveil these things to people, but you're just validating to them how bad it was. And so real rebuilding of trust needs to be a visible process where we walk through, how did this happen? Who was involved? We got rid of them. What are the steps to make sure this never happens again? And again, the window is closing, and none of that has happened at all, in my opinion.
How is Marjorie Taylor Greene faring with your polling through all this Epstein stuff? Or Massey?
I haven't done her district, but I've seen other numbers, and she's going to win. I think the people that vote for her say, well, she's representing us. We're her constituents, and she should be speaking. And if that means going against the president, then, that might be popular in her district. But what I can tell you from a national perspective, again, Trump should be fighting for America, not fighting his own party. And so for him to, again, I don't like that maybe that they're the votes that blow up something that could be popular for America. But then the idea to make them the target of so much wrath and then level what will be tens of millions of dollars to take out people in your own party when that money could be spent expanding the MAGA base, like in bluish states where they're running terrible establishment candidates and they're going to get crushed, and nobody learns about how the right can bring pragmatic economic populism as a common sense response to what will be literally socialism eventually.
It seems like he has gotten himself in his plan is to bring money stateside, to bring as much money and as much jobs and as much autonomy back to this continent. And his thinking, it seems to me, he expects that's going to drive the economic recovery. And if the faster he can bring money in here, the more he can do, the better it's going to go. But in the meantime, he's in all these international entanglements. And he's got to, defend his sort of partners in this process of bringing money here. It's going to be a high wire act, it seems to me, particularly with the midterms looming.
Yep. They have very little time left. I think next year only has 95 days on the legislative calendar before the midterm elections. And I haven't seen really a mea culpa out of the Republicans, like really any signaling. Like Mike Johnson came out November 12th, a year ago, that we are working with the president to provide legislative solutions. There's a lot of things that you could do that Americans want, and they're not going to get through Congress because there's a 60-vote filibuster limit. But you look at things like just voter ID or paper ballots, like these things are super popular among both parties. And election integrity reforms, there are bills that have been written. They're not going to get addressed by Congress. And so Republicans are probably going to pass one reconciliation bill. They're probably going to message it poorly. Nobody's going to understand what was in it. The Democrats are going to be like, oh, look, it's super terrible. And what you have is Republicans, again, they have their reasons, but they're defending essentially this stupid Senate rule. And they're using whataboutisms in order to defend it when Donald Trump's out there like pleading with them for America to just nuke the filibuster and let's get real bills. Like that should be the plan for Republicans. Look, government can work. We pass laws for you. They're not stuffed with 3,000 pages.
They got Epstein through the Senate in like 3 hours. I'm angry that they were able to do that because it shows that they can do that. I didn't know that was possible. So look, they've shown their hand. You can do it. Now do it. Mark, I really appreciate you being here as always. It was Steve Bannon that was salivating over your material. So I enjoyed seeing him enthusiastically enjoy your appearance as we do here. And we appreciate you sharing the numbers. And the numbers are the numbers. They speak for themselves, as we always say.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, we had a good time with Steve talking about the fourth turning. People should read that book. It's happening now.
I read it. I have to tell you, though, I couldn't tell. It's very hard to tell. The timing is very nebulous, right? On when it's going to occur and how it's going to occur. And exactly what it's going to look like is completely obscured by that book.
Yeah.
And they go so far as to say, there's going to be a crisis, you're not going to like it. And then something's good is going to come out of it. Well,
I'll give you two examples.
I've been through a bunch of crises.
Yeah, well, this one's going to change everybody's values. Everybody wants order. But order is a pull process, not a push process. You can't preach conservatism at people and expect them. So what happens is, again, something will happen. Who knows what it is? But when things get crazy, crazy stuff happens. But if you look, what's going to happen is that there will be an age break and a new generation of leadership will step up. And so I think Israel was the leading edge of this. And it's not Israel's fault. But if you look at the Israel polling from 20 years ago, there was no age signal at all. But now, very recently, the 18 to 29s are completely different than the 65 and olders on the issue of Israel. And obviously, it's because they're consuming different news. But part of it is because Israel, in my opinion, represents one of a very established value sets of the boomer generation. And essentially the kids are just rebelling against their elders. And you're going to see a lot more of that. I think you're going to see it on NATO.
And I think 16 to 25 is where it's really going to come in, because those are the ones we damaged with the lockdowns and all that nonsense. And they're going to be, when they wake up to what's been done to them, they are going to be really angry, and good for them. All right, Mark, thank you so much.
Yeah, great to be here.
You got it. See you soon, I hope.
Bye-bye, Joe.
Next up, no, that was Mark. Joel.
He sounds like Joe Rogan.
Oh, that's right. It's like Joe Rogan. And something's happening with my Restream my Restream chat where it's not, something's wrong. I don't know if they're having some issues over there, Caleb, or what's going on. Here. But let me, it's
not many people there.
Maybe I'm not signed in or something. Joel Kotkin, let me talk about him first here. Joel can be followed on X at Joel Kotkin. Also joelkotkin.com, Kotkin. As I had explained, Joel is a scholar, global economic and urban trends. He is the Roger Hobbs Presidential Fellow in the Urban Futures at Chapman University. Many books, including The Coming of Neo-Feudalism. He will tell us what that is. And there it is. And we may start with that. He also is making note of some of the things that Fareed Zakaria was saying. I think, yes, there he is. Fareed Zakaria on CNN about Democratic leaders in the blue cities. Joel, welcome.
Nice to be here.
Pleasure to have you. I think since we made a point of putting the book up, we ought to discuss what is neo-feudalism.
Well, neo-feudalism is an idea that I came up with. My background is in history. And what I really was saying is we're in the danger of repeating what happened during the feudal era, where there's tremendous concentration of wealth and power in fewer and fewer hands. Upward mobility is very difficult. People kind of stuck where they are. What we may end up with at the end, and I'm writing a piece for Unheard about this now, we may end up with the vast majority of the population being essentially beneficiaries of what Karl Marx called the proletarian alms bag. In other words, you're going to have people who are going to really be unable to support themselves. They will demand a certain amount of regular income. And this is really a lot of what you see with Mandami, which is, well, we're not going to grow the economy, but we're going to take money from the rich people. And so you can have rent control and free buses and free and grocery stores and free healthcare. And I can understand how that's happening, because people look at this enormous concentration of wealth and power at the very top of society. And it doesn't matter, frankly, who's president. The economic and technological forces are infinitely more important than the political ones.
Now, I think about feudalism as a social order maintained, yes, by concentrations of wealth, but really concentrations of violence, right?
Right.
These people would buy. They were warlords ultimately, weren't they?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, we're not. Again, I don't expect to see Mark Zuckerberg, dressed up in chainmail. There are different ways. I think Woody Guthrie once said that, some people rob you with a gun, and some people rob you with a fountain pen. And we're now in the fountain pen era.
Yes, but I do worry that there will be some sort of. I mean, these back and forth backlashes, which are kind of, speaking of history, inevitable, that they tend to get more and more aggressive.
Yeah, I think part of it is and I think your previous speaker definitely identified some of it. You have a whole generation coming up now whose chance to have, in quote, the American dream, own a house, start a business. Actually do better than their parents. All those things are going in the wrong direction. And I think people, this younger generation, now they're not all, going to be socialists. I mean, you're going to see more of that in a place like New York. but they're angry. They're angry on the right. They're angry on the left. They didn't like Biden, and they don't much like Trump. And so, the question is, how do we address this issue? And I think neither party has a decent solution. I would say the Republicans come and say, "Oh, we have to go back to free markets." Well, how much of a free market is it if the vast majority of the wealth is controlled by a small group of people? I don't necessarily think that's going to be useful. And I see conservatives say, "Oh, there really isn't massive inequality." Well, anybody who looks at the numbers knows that's true. Their big excuse is, "Well, we, because of welfare payments and transfer payments, it's not as bad as it might look." But the ownership of assets is increasingly concentrated. So you've got the Republicans who, I think, as your last guest said, seem increasingly just clueless, not understanding these issues in a way that I think in 2016 Trump did have a good take on it. And then you've got the Democrats, and half the Democratic Party is sustained by money from the same oligarchs. And then you've got this sort of nutty Mandami, they call him socialist, but if you really look at what he believes in, it's really Marxist, Leninist, third world socialism. It's not Swedish socialism. It's not, Pat Brown social democracy. It's not Harry Truman. It is something that really is not particularly native to this country, but has been inculcated, particularly in the highly educated classes, and is something that, if it ever came to pass, I think would be catastrophic. So what is the solution? So I'm writing something, actually, will be out. I'll be finishing it tomorrow. I think we need to revisit social democracy in the old sense of it, using government to put money into infrastructure, grow the economy, deal with some of the inequality, but not in a way that says, well, we're going to take all the money from the oligarchs and we're going to take all the money from the wealthy. That will just discourage growth. I think the important thing is, how do we use government policy in a way that helps the middle and working class do better? I think any party that comes up with that solution will do well.
So I want to stop you and sort of point out that I agree with you, everything you said, except the anger that people are feeling on both sides is really a function of the incompetence and the grifting, right? It's not the centralization exclusively. If they got their damn jobs done, a perfect example of this is Karen Bass here, a city of Los Angeles, says, LA Times writes a scathing article about the fact that the firemen were asked to stand down after the first fire broke out. And she goes, absolutely, this is terrible. I'm going to put a committee together to talk about this. This state does nothing except talk, committees, and then you have $91 billion of fast rail between two cities nobody cares about, and not a single track is laid down. This is the incompetence and then the inability to untangle the regulatory, totalitarian regulatory state. It's just these two things: the inability to put people in place that are competent, and then the inability to deregulate so these competent people can do their job. It just seems like, and then the part of that, sort of the corollary again still, is the swamp in Washington. This is what everybody's angry about. You're right. If they could do if I trusted that the government could do a massive airport renovation or something, that took them 10 years to put together the people mover in at the LAX. Because why? Because of environmental impact, because of regulation, because. And even then, even though our mayor says, I'm gonna roll it back, we're gonna have some way of efficiency way of getting the building permits out. 4 houses are built in the Palisades in the meantime. Nobody can build. And the Coastal Commission is on top of the buildings, so you can't do anything, even if you could get the permits. So how do we solve this incredible incompetence crisis?
Well, I think the bottom line is you have to have people who are committed to doing things in a competent way and not being dominated by what many people call the groups, the Greens, some organized, parts of organized labor, all the big nonprofits. But can we do it? Well, I think, in Florida, they seem to be getting things done relatively efficiently.
Yes.
And I know that here in California, where I've lived for, again, over 50 years, what I experienced after the LA earthquake with Mayor Reardon, and they were able to get the freeway back up in record time.
Yep.
The capacity to do things is there. The willingness and the political courage to do it is not. I mean, you have someone like Gavin Newsom, who is basically a chameleon and will change from one thing to the other. He's not going to challenge the powers in the Democratic Party, particularly as he wants to be president. Karen Bass is the prisoner of the public employee unions. She's not going to do things efficiently either. So the problem is we need sort of almost a new kind of government consciousness, not get rid of government and leave the market to do everything, because I don't think that will work. But there has to be a very different consciousness about how things get done. And the only way you really can do that is to break the power of public employee unions and the groups. And right now we don't have the kind of political leadership that did it. I have seen it happen. I can tell you very quickly. I look at what's happening in Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles is a complete bureaucratic disaster. But there are a whole bunch of smaller cities that are very well run. They're also working class Latino cities. You drive from LA and it looks like Mumbai on a bad day. You get into these small cities, they're clean, there's no graffiti. The reason is you have responsive leaders who, as one of them said, if the graffiti doesn't come down, I'm not going to be able to eat breakfast at the diner. We've lost that connection where, you could take the LA City Council. Well, I was about to say nude, but who'd want to see that? But I have the LA City Council walk down Main Street and nobody would know who they are. So somehow we have to figure out how to get a closer connection between what the public wants and what officials do. And right now, particularly here in California and in New York, and God knows what's going to happen when Mandami gets in, because there the groups will actually be running the government.
It's very simple from the standpoint of what you're describing is I'd like people that can govern. The basics of government are completely abdicated. And it seems to me, as a little sort of sidebar to all this, you better teach history. You better teach your discipline. And I mean, it's unbelievable to me that people they have zero connection with the historical past. Zero.
I'll give you a good example, which is very relevant right now. I teach a class on propaganda, and one of the classes is about socialism. And I deal with Christianity, National Socialism, trying to understand how ideas get marketed. So I put up a picture of Lenin, 35 kids. One recognized it, and he happened to be an Armenian kid from Moscow who grew up in Moscow.
Right, of course.
So like when Mandami talks in tones that Lenin would have approved of, there's no connection. Oh my God, but this was a disaster when it was imposed in the Soviet Union. It's been a disaster in Venezuela. It's a disaster in Cuba. But they don't know any of these things. And I think there's been quite consciously an attempt, I think, to just ignore the experience of the Soviet Union. It just as if it never existed. And of course, you've got a combination of lack of knowledge, and then you've got, and particularly at the college level, professors who are basically, training the next generation of party cadres. I mean, sometimes it seems to me our professors would have been more comfortable in the Soviet Union than in a truly liberal institution.
I recommend that everyone read the Lenin, the Man, the Dictator, Master of Terror by Sebastian. It's one of the more recent Lenin biographies. And if it doesn't send chills down your spine every time you open it, then you're not, you don't have a pulse. He was really an accident of history when you get right down to it. But I actually read that book on the recommendation of Mark Andreessen. And I think it was worth my time invested. You will not come away with a good feeling. So if you can't read about American history, at least read about the misadventures in France and Russia. Two major, and the French is a whole other preoccupation of mine, how they idolize, they romanticize 1789 in ways that are just absolutely disgusting and weird. They don't understand that was a out of control mob and they had to get a dictator in there to settle things down. They just blame the dictator for what happened afterwards. Incredible. But do you have any closing thoughts about sort of this topic generally? And then I want to bring you back sometime to talk about propaganda, because propaganda is a big, big, big topic. And I want to talk about persuasion, propaganda, and what the hell's going on in this country with that. But go ahead.
I think the basic thing is we really have to understand that we don't have to choose between a libertarian society, libertarian policies that and ruled by a bunch of corporate oligarchs, and yes, Marxist-Leninism. There's a third way. Right. We've lost what that third way is. I think there are a few politicians in both parties who sort of get it, part of it, but right now we're in the track of choosing between two unsustainable alternatives, and we need to come up with something else.
You're so right. You're so right when you say there are a few politicians. I was watching the RFK Jr. hearings, and the senator from Rhode Island jumped out at me like, oh, this guy's got the appropriate, he's guy's concerned about things that he should be thinking about, not getting his 3 minutes of airtime. He was worried about end of life, the expense of end of life care, and how we could save on that dramatically, which of course is where most of our healthcare dollars are spent fruitlessly. So anyway, thank you very much for being here. Where would you like people to go? Should they get the book? Should they go to the website? Where would you like them to show up?
Well, they could go to my website, joelkotkin.com. They could go to Civitas. I'm a fellow at the University of Texas. Or you could go to Chapman EDU, and you can find me there as well. And clearly go buy the book.
And you've got the Neofeudalism book, and also the. I'm just thinking about you. You're in Orange County there, the great tiny parts of Orange County that are still where I can feel like my lungs fill with air. Huntington Beach, but there are, even if more inland, there are areas that still function. So they are a great example of what we should be doing.
There's a lot of California that works perfectly well. This is a great state with great potential, and if we only could find decent leadership, we'd be okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we're taking a little break and then get Elaine Culotti in here. We're going to talk a little more about the psychology of the California voters and carbon credits and the high-speed rail fiasco. She's got a lot that she has seen. I will explain to who Elaine is after we return. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. The wellness company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and being rationally ready, and who knows what the future will hold for us. Now, TWC has a service to cover your family's medical needs, including and especially prevention. For just $100 a month, the One Wellness Elite membership includes 2 free medical-grade nutraceuticals per month, free prescriptions for over 800 of the most common medications, access to concierge telemedicine, available at a moment's notice, and a 15% discount on all supplements and the emergency kits. 15% off the emergency kits. That's quite a saving. So if you're spending $100 or more on supplements and meds every month, this plan will already save you money. If you sign up for a year, you'll save $200. And when you use the link, drdrew.com/TWC, you'll get 10% off the first payment to the One Wellness Elite membership. Check out One Wellness at drdrew.com/TWC and get 10% off your first payment. drdrew.com/TWC. It's all there. Next year, the national debt is going to hit $40 trillion. As insane as that sounds, it's even worse when you consider unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare. If our status as the world's reserve currency suddenly changes, our nation could collapse under the weight of its debt. And as we all know, there are many forces trying hard to take down that U.S. dollar. This is why thousands of Americans are moving portions of their retirement into physical gold and silver. Our friends at Augusta Precious Metals have put together a 3-minute report entitled "Debt Will Hit $40 Trillion in 2026. Prepare your retirement now." It details how a self-directed IRA with real physical assets may be the best option in 2025. Go to drdrew.com/gold. That is drdrew.com/GOLD, or text Drew, DREW, to 35052. That's 35052. And you'll get instant access to this crucial report. If you have $50,000 or more in your IRA, 401k, TSP, or other retirement accounts, consider our friends at Augusta Precious Metals to give you the information you need to make an informed decision about your retirement. It's fine to fight for our nation's future, but we all need to protect our own futures first. Read this important 3-minute report by visiting drdrew.com/gold. That is drdrew.com/GOLD, or text Drew to 35052 and see what Augusta can do for you.
And that suggests trouble in a relationship.
Sean, who are you? Like Dr. Drew all of a sudden?
Elaine can be followed at Lipstick Farmer, also Facebook Lipstick Farmer. She obviously is interested in sustainable farming. She was the former star of Undercover Billionaire. She is a resident of the fine state of California and barely survived the fires. She's also on X as Lipstick Farmer, as I said. Elaine, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I've been watching the last 2 guests and I'm blown away. I'm absolutely blown.
It's interesting, right?
Well, he's spot on about this issue where you've got 2 polar opposites, a stiff Republican and then this crazy Marxism, and that's not possible. Neither are sustainable, and you don't have this middle ground. And the middle ground is the middle.
Right.
It's like where we are not utilizing these brains that are, reaping 15% on their investments, and they're basically gathering trillions of dollars of assets. Everybody else is just left in the dust. It's a shame.
Yeah.
And we're about
it's disgusting.
Tax here. You know that, right?
Does it do what kind of tax?
Billionaires tax. The 2026 billionaires tax has been put on the, it's up, the bill's written. It was, I think it was first introduced in October of this year. Yeah.
It's 1% of your net worth or something?
No, it's much worse. It's the top 200. So there's 200 billionaires, 250 billionaires, but the top 200 billionaires in California, they're looking to tax them 5%. And they're going to do 5%. This one time on their assets, which are estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 trillion. This is all to raise $100 billion from these billionaires to pay for the distance between the Medicare, Medi-Cal that is for illegal aliens versus what we've been able to get, for regular citizens. Right. This is, I think, $30 billion problem. So they want to steal $100 billion from the billionaires. But what they're missing, which is exactly what Joel was talking about, is like the contribution. You know, the billionaires that live in California pay $122 billion a year in taxes into the general fund. And you know, if you have
They
$1 billion,
want more. They want more, Elaine. They want more. They want more.
So
they need more.
$1 billion.
They,
That's a
Yeah, they have kicked out so many businesses and so many thriving tax-based sources of money. It's just unbelievable. And all in the name is sort of political expediency and their incompetence in terms of their ability to actually govern, as I was saying. But talk to me about wildfire, because this is just the prime, the wildfire and the water and the high-speed rail are the most sort of emblematic, and I guess homelessness too. These are the visual emblems of the dysfunction in this state and the lack of competency. The fire obviously is just ridiculous. Nobody can rebuild. The Coastal Commission is in on this. That's why there's not a single on the ocean side of the Pacific Coast Highway. There's not a single building, nothing. Absolutely nothing going on, because there shall be nothing going on ever. Because, by the way, people don't understand that the Coastal Commission has a policy called reclamation. If nature takes the house back, they're thinking about the water when they say that. But if it goes by fire, oh well, it reclaimed it. Nature's got it back. Sorry.
Nature's putting a transit district in the Pacific Palisades, signature of the Coastal Commission. So I don't know what they're talking about. They dismantled the 3 people that run Coastal Commission. Listen, this is going to be the undoing of Sacramento. This whole thing is going to be the undoing. At the end of the day, you've got a small group of people that are trying to actually rezone people's personal property, and this after they've lost everything. By this SB 79